Platform engineering on the eve of Kubecon. We'll be back in a minute. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest edition of the Techstrong Gang. We've got an awesome lineup as usual. We got Gina Rosenthal, Jack Poller, Wickey Wang, and Andi Mann, and we're going to have a conversation about a lot of different things today, all of which are top of mind for folks. But as I mentioned early on, we are at the first day, or at least the pre-first day of KubeCon. There's going to be a lot of folks hanging out in Atlanta all week long, and today there is this platform engineering session going on, which apparently is jam-packed. And we have an article up on platformengineering.com, which you all should check out because it talks about Platform Engineering 3.0, which is essentially all about how AI will be applied to platform engineering. But Gina, I know you looked at this article and I know you've kind of talked about with this in the past, but I'd love to get your take a little bit on how real is platform engineering in your mind? What is this thing? Because it's a little still, shall we say, amorphous.
Well, I think platform engineering is a good idea. And I think this article, there were some very interesting, there's a very interesting section about from scripts to systems. So platform engineering is this idea where everything can be run from code and you can build ultimately the hope and dream is your ops and your development teams are going to work together because they have this platform that the engineers can just say what they want their test system to look like or what they want their development system to look like. And so instead of doing it on their laptops or some system under their desk, it's all being cooled with real world scenarios, and the little test beds are being built with like it's going to look in production, and they go crazy. Then they check it into the CI systems, and then everything just works as it should, just by itself. And the premise of this idea is that we've gone from scripts back in the old ancient days when I was a sysadmin, and we're going to now get to this AI native intelligent insight. That's going to be step 3. And the problem with this article with me was it just kind of didn't give a lot of examples of how that works and what's going on. That was the first problem I had. I love the idea of thinking about automation first, that everything should be turned into code, and that can. And I think that is a fabulous idea. That is not a new idea. That is something I was doing back when I was a sysadmin for Solaris and Red Hat. We did Kickstart and Jumpstart scripts, and with some arcane, horribly hard to understand language, and you just hoped nothing in the hardware side changed too much that you'd have to go back into that language and fill it out. Now you have all of these great ways to develop these scripts. You've got all sorts of great systems. You've got companies that are doing infrastructure of code and doing the hard work of figuring out the hardware intricacies for you so that you can have this continuously updated system. So they think we're at the self-service stage, which is step 2, and standardization, which that's the hard part. That is the super hard part, especially if you're dealing with bare metal or you're dealing with a cloud that might decide to change something out of the blue on you and mess all your systems up. Part I really had a problem with, though, was the AI native. What are we calling AI? I mean, this is like an AI thing to me more than a platform engineering thing. What is AI? Because the things that we need to look for drift in scripts, that we need to help have a way to inventory all of the servers you have available or VMs you have available or you're working with, and to see where the problems are. That's, if it's anything, it's what they call narrow AI, which is what we've always called machine learning and deep learning. So we're not looking at some brand new thing that's going to automatically learn and do all the things. And to put the icing on a cake, once that happens, if you've never had to deal with the intricacies of hardware, even on a cloud, the differences between things and software versions, then how do you learn? Where's our next gen coming from? How are they going to ever know how to do things if we don't remember that all this changes? That's what makes it really hard. And while it would be great to say AI does it, I don't think the author really maybe thought about what AI. I would love to have seen some examples of what she thought that was. So that was my thought. But I love the idea of it because it sucked doing it the old way. So I'm hoping it's getting better for people.
Gina, one thing you mentioned was, arcane languages. And I think the premise and promise of LLM integration, whether you call that native or not, is the ability to put a natural language interface on what we're doing with computer configurations and the infrastructure configuration. The ability for us to be able to say, hey, I want this server to have this many instances and to be able to talk to that machine in English language is a very useful uh, capability. And I think that will help us in the long run. Getting there is the really challenging part. And I think that's you're right to sort of raise that is how do we do that and what does that really look like?
Yeah. And is this just an elaborate effort to get rid of scripts? I mean, are we wrapping buzzwords around buzzwords just to kind of kill the scripts?
Well, yes, because we're in IT and we're talking about software and vendors and stuff. So absolutely, this is what we do. But look, I actually think this. I do agree with Gina on one point, and I disagree on quite a lot. But I agree that look, this is essentially an ML thing. I think this is not really an AI. Are we talking agentic? Maybe we're talking a little bit about LLM. Look, I actually worked on this at Splunk like 100 years ago, right? We were partnered with Puppet. Puppet does automated provisioning and configuration management and stuff, typically out of the older world, but novated under the cloud regime. And we prototyped this idea of intelligent machine-to-machine deployments. Is that agentic? I mean, we were using machine learning to understand the known knowns of a configured environment. So going out using Puppet to be able to understand what's happening, effectively maintaining this idea of a dynamic CMDB. Yes, I said the C word. And using that as an LLM to then plan and automate the deployment, the configuration, the scale up, the scale out, right, and then the deprovisioning. I actually think this is a super opportunity. A lot of operations, I've talked about this before, is unknown unknowns. When problems occur, troubleshooting, that's where you need the smarts to do the hard work and the thinking. But you know what? Deployment and configuration management, that's where we have a lot of known knowns. We have things like golden images. We have things like CMDBs. We have scripts that define how infrastructure is deployed in our infrastructure as code. So we actually have a bunch of known knowns. I think this is potentially a really positive way to get out of the configuration management business as humans and be able to use these, machine learning on the pipe to understand what is a good configuration, what is running a known good environment with high performance, and being able to, like Jack said, talk NLP. Hey, Siri, fire me up a gold image because I want to run an AI workload. Boom, we're there. I don't know. Yeah, it is a little bit future forward. And yes, we are trying to sell a bag of goods when it comes to this future forward notion of platform engineering. But look, I actually think this one could be real.
No, I totally agree with you. So don't get me wrong, right? Because I've worked on, I've worked in the old school. I haven't had the privilege of having to sysadmin a new school kind of thing. But my point is and this has always been my point. We are computer scientists and we have had this spectrum of things that hasn't started. I mean, that was like crazy blow your mind stuff 10 years ago to me. But back when we were doing Jumpstart and Kickstart, the beginnings of this, that your problem that you solved so many problems we had with the developers, right? So like the promise of being able to say a developer has a user case, he doesn't know what it's going to run on, or she doesn't know what it's going to run on. If they can declaratively say, hey, I want to, like you said, I want to build an agentic platform, they can, that could be done automatically. I think the problem I have is feeling like this is something humans never could have accomplished. That excuse me, that we're using AI to do it. One sec. Yeah, sorry that over. So I think the problem is that we're acting like this isn't a continuum from where we've come from. We need to recognize that. We need to recognize it's not AI. We need to stop calling ML and AI and deep learning things AI. There are products that have those capabilities in them already. So my point is, let's when we start talking about this, and hopefully hopefully Atlanta will see this, this week, we need to see some examples of how you've built this in already. What does this look like? Instead of just this, oh, it would sure be nice if we had these you can't define 3 stages without giving some proof behind it. That's kind of my point too.
Mhm. Wickey, I'd like to get your opinion here, because the one thing, and I don't hear a lot about when I hear the phrase platform engineering, is security, compliance, or any of those fun
Yeah,
things.
so I think the key insight is the team can't stand on a single tool, right, anymore, because it's so complicated now. They do need a governance and observability layer that can span different frameworks and clouds. So I think AI, LLM, that ability can make it happen, right? So in this year, in RSA, earlier this year, I actually see a lot of different AI tool can make it happen. A lot of company make the AI or LLM elements in their tools to help in this area, which is fascinating. Yeah.
Andi, I can't figure the following out. Is platform engineering something apart and distinct from DevOps? Is it the evolution of DevOps, or is it just kind of really a DevOps mulligan and we're just doing this over again with a different kind of spin on it?
Oh, mate. You put me on the spot with that one. Look, DevOps, as we know, DevOps is fractured into all sorts of commercial opportunities, and platform engineering is absolutely one of them. Look, this actually comes out of the idea of a Spotify model. So not actually DevOps. This is not about collaboration, communication and integration of teams. This is about having a service department, which is okay. And I don't know that I love it. The idea of platform engineering definitely comes out of DevOps. It comes out of infrastructure as code. It comes out of the idea that developers aren't actually operations. They don't actually do provisioning configuration management, and we shouldn't ask them to. So I think it does come out of DevOps in that devs have asked ops to do a job for them, which is build environments that are going to work and scale and, ideally be predefined to be secure and all these sorts of things. But ultimately, yeah, I don't know. I don't know that I love this. I think having an expert team to sort of replace the golden image team with a dynamic on-demand provisioning team, I don't think it breaks down barriers. I don't think it breaks down walls. I really like it from an automation perspective. And if I was a developer who could just click a button and go, boom, there's my environment, I'd be super happy. But I think it does take some of the collaboration out, and I think it does sort of work against some of those good principles of DevOps that we've worked towards for so long. That idea of collaboration, that everyone's on the same team, that we're all working together to get this software out the door. I don't know that it's positive that way.
Gina, do you think that we have an opportunity here to maybe finally bridge the divide between the classic IT admins and the DevOps engineers, and maybe we'll all link arms and sing Kumbaya together? What do you say?
Oh man, why? That's Andy's question. I hadn't thought about what Andi just said. That this idea that a developer could just declaratively state what the environment should be might not be a good thing, because it keeps the developers separated from the ops people, and it does get rid of one of those DevOps principles. And I kind of think that's probably true, because I think I think we go in stages with this as the hardware matures and the hardware is able to do more things for the software. And I think we're probably in that stage, and we're probably going to be in that stage for another couple of years, where you as an ops person, the reaction might be to not over secure it, but to keep that away from the developers, let them just run fast, give them what they need. And this is a way to do that. And so maybe that takes away. So I'm not sure, but I do think that that's not a good thing on the ops side, because it's much better to work with your developers and to understand what they're needing and what they're going to declaratively call. So it's already there. So not having to deal with each other is probably in the long run not a good thing. I got that from you, Andi. Thank you.
There you go. Jack, help me out here. So software engineers will have their own AI agents. They may have, I don't know, each member of the team will have, let's just say, arguably 10. Developers will have their own AI agents, and they'll probably have 10 of those. And then we'll have a bunch of AI agents that are assigned a particular task on behalf of the team. And this all sounds wonderful. And of course, something will fit in the middle of that to provide some orchestration. But as I continue to think about it, just the overall complexity of managing that may be beyond the cognitive capabilities of a mere human. So, how are we going to manage all these agents and all this stuff to create this new platform engineering team that we're talking about in the age of 3.0? Because once I get past, I don't know, 20 agents, can I really manage that?
Well, we love specialization in IT. And so I think you're now going to see the rise of, we have this thing we call AI ops, but you're now going to see AI platform engineering, whose job it is going to be to build and maintain the AI platform that helps the platform engineers build and maintain the platform on which our apps actually run. And at some point, the specialization is going to be a little bit crazy, right? Where we're going to have people whose only job it is to just, tweak one button so that somebody else can tweak a button, so that somebody else can tweak a button. So eventually we can run something somewhere. I think, the counter argument to that, of course, is that as I said before, AI and LLM gives you the opportunity to use a natural language interface. AI in general gives you the opportunity to abstract away a lot of the drudgery and complexity of the day-to-day things, so that we are no longer, if you think about what is infrastructure as code, it's taking away the need for an infrastructure person, whether they're a developer or an operations person, to log into every individual machine and type individual commands to configure that machine, right? Instead, we have a level of indirection and a higher level language. We can talk about how we want things to look and let a machine do the complex, minutia of configuring every little bit and byte. And if we can then abstract that out one level, maybe we can do away with some of the platform engineers and some of the DevOps engineers and some of the AI ops engineers, because we've automated enough of this that the underlying infrastructure is complex, but the management of it is simplified. I hope.
I hate how right you are about some of this stuff, Jack. I hate to think that you are right, but I think you are right. We're going to have agents running agents. And, this actually does come back to something that Gina pointed out, and that's the skill issue. And the more we have this embedded in platform engineering, this expertise, and the more complicated the environment gets, and the more we seed that knowledge to the LLM or whatever agent AI it might be, where is the knowledge going to come from when we need to do something new and different? The golden images or the infrastructure as code definitions that we've got today are not going to get us to where we need to be tomorrow. So who then figures that out? So yeah, I actually think you're right, Jack, and I hate that you're right, because we're going to, to Gina's point, just atrophy a lot of knowledge into those systems.
So the thing is, too, but based on Jack, what you said about the agents managing agents, does that mean we'll have to have a specialized section of the CMDB to accept tickets from all these agents and disperse them properly? I think so too.
Well, that's sort of that would be the 1.0 version, right? Which is where you simply automated what humans do. But the right way to do all of this is to rethink it and say, how does, a clean sheet of paper, how does it look if you had a clean sheet of paper, and what would machine to machine communication look like to make these things happen? Take the human out of the loop and do it the right way the first time.
Yeah, I just want to say, I just talked to somebody this week talking about how they manage the agent identity, or like put agent as part of the thing, right? It's kind of interesting, like agent and agent used to talk together, but people still need to be in the loop. Yeah, make it happen. Yeah.
Well, folks, I don't know whether you believe in platform engineering or not, but I will tell you that people who have platform engineering certificates and things like that seem to be making about 20 to 25% more than your average DevOps engineer does. So get yourself a certificate, whether you believe in it or not, because, well, you get yourself a raise. We'll be back in a minute.
You've earned it. The spotlight, the responsibility, the weight of teams, companies, and entire industries fall on your shoulders. Lives depend on your decisions. your home life included. At work, you're protected, physically and digitally. Nothing gets through your team without a fight. But in a globally connected world, everyone sees you, including those who mean to cause you and your organization harm. And now home, your sanctuary. Attackers see an opportunity. Your digital front door is wide open. And what compromises your home can breach your boardroom. Because the devil's greatest trick isn't targeting your workplace firewall. It's convincing you that your personal life isn't at risk. Black Cloak. Digital executive protection, defending the new attack surface. Your personal life.
All right, folks, we're back and we're shifting gears a little bit. There's been reports that Apple plans to have some sort of deal with Google to embed Google's AI Gemini models into Siri, which, a lot of folks are talking about. But Wickey, I'd like to get your opinion on this. And of course, I'm a little biased. I use Google. I have Android phones, and I kind of looked at this and shrugged and said, well, if Apple's going to use Google, why don't I just use my phone in the first place? Because it's the same AI model. So why am I going to get a different phone to go talk to a different model? I don't know. But what's your take on what's going on here?
I want to talk from two perspectives, right? First of all, like Google and Apple, they have collaboration for a long time, right? From the search side, Google still need to pay Apple to put their search into the Apple phone. So it's not new they have a collaboration. So that, and second thing, I think Apple actually play very, very smart. Like all those big hats, they put a lot of money into the GPU and try to get all the chips and spend a lot of money, right? But Apple, I feel like they're very calm. They always with their pace, right? They choose very smart to how they spend their money on the infra or other thing. So it's not bad if they have they leverage whatever Google has already and to enhance their LML capability, right? So like I do talk with somebody early this year in my podcast when they talk about their LLM, they used to really want to have their own model. But their prediction is if they have their own model, their delivery will be in 2027. But at the time when OpenAI suddenly said, okay, we have that API and they can quickly plug in and then make their product happen within 2025, right? Which is a huge jump and huge saving from their side. I think Apple is kind of like doing the same thing. They try to leverage the capability Google model has and spend less money from their side, while at the same time they try to deliver the best product. I think it's very smart. This is my opinion. Yeah.
Jack, what's your take here? Because on the one, some folks would say it's a bit of a black eye to Apple because they're leaning on Google for AI after talking up their own Apple initiatives for a while. But to Wickey's point, maybe these things are compatible with each other, and better sooner than later.
My understanding is that this is theoretically a sort of a stopgap measure. I think, as Wickey was saying, that Apple needs something now. What I don't understand from Apple's perspective is what is the value of owning your own LLM model? And, Apple likes to control its own destiny, but does having a model that's not Gemini and that's not OpenAI's model and somebody else's model, what value does that bring to Apple in the long run? And is it worth the ROI of, I don't know, what's it cost now for them to do it? $10 billion, $20 billion to build a model, right? Apple's current model is 250 billion parameters, and they're moving to Gemini's 1.2 trillion parameter model. So it's 5 times as big almost. And, in terms of the amount of knowledge it has and can consume and manipulate. So I just don't understand what Apple gets from having their own model. And I think chasing that is a fool's errand.
Because people always talk about where's the future direction for the AI or LLM. because of the energy resource strengths, we tend to see like it's more at the edge end, right? Which is like a small language model. I think it still have a value if Apple can keep their own model towards to like a smaller size model, specifically to support edge technology. So I think this is some point I can add in. Yeah.
Andy, I got to tell you, and this is kind of similar to what we just talked about in the previous thing, but I'm a little worried that at some point in the future, my AI agent is going to be talking to your AI agent and they're going to negotiate something. And the next thing you know, I'm going to be meeting you in Timbuktu because our AI agent set up this meeting. How are we going to manage all this and kind of keep some level of control around it?
I don't know, mate. If my Outlook calendar would only handle time zones perfectly, then I think would be great. But no, look, it is going to be an agent-to-agent world. Machine-to-machine is something that I know colleagues of mine, people like Dennis Drogseth at EMA, who's retired now, the research emeritus, has been talking about machine-to-machine for a long time. And this comes out of older technologies, everything old is new again, my thesis, IT process automation and robotic process automation combined with intelligence and library knowledge becomes, agentic AI in a lot of ways. So yes, this is absolutely going to be the case. But I think that's actually part of why this is a good deal for Apple, because this is not a case of agentic AI. This is not a case of advanced intelligence and becoming a differentiator for their platform. You think about things like Gemini or Claude or Anthropic, and you think about corporate use cases and, understanding what is my customer buying patterns and, what other offers could I make to get someone out of that mode into this mode and stop churn. That's not this. Right? On-device AI for Apple is like, take a picture of my grandson or delete my ex from this photo or answer question, why do cowboys wear chaps? I don't know. This is what on-device AI is for Apple. Is it going to really differentiate them to have their own model with 1 trillion vectors? Or can they get away with a Claude, an Anthropic, a Gemini? I think that's really smart because we are going to get to where you were going, agents to agents, machine to machine. This is absolutely going to be a thing, and that's its own problem. But this is very much about grandma trying to get her phone to work properly. And I think Apple intelligence has been missing in action, a total dud. And as Wickey said, Google and Apple, this is a partnership already. The enemy of my enemy is my friend, and they both want to see Microsoft not succeed, right? So this idea of being a slow follower with core competency differentiate everywhere else, like Wickey said, on the experience, on the device, on the software, on the walled garden, is AI going to make the difference for them? I don't think so. So, yeah, I think this is actually pretty interesting.
I don't know. I'm a little bit worried about, someday my father-in-law is going to call me up and he's going to say, hey, can you come pick me up? And I'm going to say, where are you? And he's going to say, I don't know, but it says somewhere in the South Bronx, and I'm going to have to go drive down there and get him because the phone sent him there.
It's true. I mean, this is true already, right? People just follow their GPS blindly and turn into canals and down one-way streets and all sorts of things. Put it this way, just because Apple is getting Gemini is not going to make humans more intelligent.
Well, the other thing about it is that's a little worrisome is one of the main drawbacks to LLMs is the data that it has been historically trained on. And that is the internet's wise, wonderful world that is absolutely discriminatory towards women, people of color, people that are disenfranchised. So that's kind of the worry thing, because I thought Apple was one of the places you could trust to have trained their model and to kept some of that out. This is just kind of like what I've heard. I don't use Apple either. I use Google, which is a whole different story that you try to keep up on, and it's impossible to. But if you know that those models have been trained that way, then how sure are we that that doesn't creep in to the Apple model? Is that same types of kind of hidden biases that are in the data, because that's how our history has been. So I think that's a concern to think about. I wonder if that's why they're going so slow to do their own thing.
I tell you what I would love to see, though, because, my household is a split one, right? Half the house is on Apple and the other half is on Android. Wouldn't it be wonderful if this AI stuff made it easier for us to communicate with each other on our phones across different apps? So then that way I don't have to sit there and get my wife telling me that I should get on, the Apple video conferencing platform so she can call me better or more easily, or we don't have to use WhatsApp as an intermediary. Is that going to be possible? What do you say, Wickey?
I should say everything is possible, right? You never know. So something cannot avoidable. So, well, that's it.
We will wait to find out. Jack, last question. Will people switch from phones based on the AI experience, or are we pretty much having this kind of Coke versus Pepsi thing and everybody's already decided and it's just a question of what capabilities are going to come in, but it's not going to change anybody's mind?
Oh, I think people are much more passionate about Apple versus everybody else than Coke versus Pepsi. And there are people who say, "You'll get my Apple device out of my cold dead fingers," right? They are not switching no matter what. I know people who have actually said they won't join a company because they couldn't have an Apple device. They wanted another, they want their Apple MacBook and their Apple phone. And if the company makes them use a Windows box, they're not going there. So, I mean, we're way past that point.
All right. Billions will be spent trying to convince people to switch, but I think most people have already made up their minds. And I don't think we're going to see a whole lot of people going, "Oh, wait, that AI experience is so much better. I'm going to give up my phone and switch everything out because I'm
I
just
think,
jealous of that AI." I don't see it
yeah, like
happening.
I the Apple device a lot, right? Like no matter what kind of a large language model they're trying to move. Sorry, I don't think that it will change my habit to use Apple. So I'm an Apple fan, sorry.
All right. Well, folks, I'm going to leave it there, but I'm pretty sure we're going to enjoy the fight whether you switch or not. We'll be back in a minute.
Discover Techstrong Group, the epicenter of tech innovation. We're your go-to for reaching IT leaders and practitioners worldwide. Our secret? Impactful content that sparks awareness, engagement, and top-quality leads. With us, you'll access editorial websites, streaming videos, virtual events, custom content, analyst research, and more. Join our satisfied clients. Let's revolutionize your tech journey. Contact us today and tell your story to the world in the most powerful way with Techstrong Group.
All right, folks, we're back with our final block of the show, and Jack Poller has an interesting story up on Security Boulevard talking about why in Israel they're sending cars back that were made in China. Jack, is this going to become a global phenomenon, or what's going on here?
Well, yes, it actually is. And I thought this was going to be just, because rightly so, Israel is very paranoid, but it turns out they're not the only paranoid country in the world. And Denmark had the same problem, the same discovery with electric buses that they bought from China. So let's first talk about Israel and we can talk about Denmark. In Israel, they have banned 700 plus cars that were imported from China that they were leasing to senior officers in the military. Their first step a couple of months ago was to ban the cars from going on base, on military bases, because the cars are equipped with cameras and microphones and cellular connections, and they weren't sure what was going on. So they started to investigate those cars, and they decided that the systems were complex enough that they could not guarantee that sensitive data was not being sent back to China and or that people couldn't hack into the cars to get access to the cameras, microphones, and the data. So from a military perspective, there's a very big operational security. If you know that the cars are associated with senior military officers and you can at the very least track their locations, then you know where the military officers are theoretically, and that's a big operational security and a big risk. So that's sort of one risk that was identified. So Israel's response was basically saying, we're taking those cars back from the senior military, and we're just not going to allow anybody in the Israeli military to use cars from these companies, but I think it's actually a larger problem in general, because if you look at most modern cars now, they have a cellular connection and they can do an over-the-air update. So you can't, even if you inspect a car's software that's embedded in it, then it can be updated. So you have to keep track of all of that. Denmark sort of looked at it and said, well, we have the same problem with Chinese buses. Now, they're not concerned about the operational espionage portion of it. They're concerned that somebody, either the Chinese government or a hacker, could come in to their electronic vehicles and basically turn them off, and then they wouldn't be able to use them. And there's, this is very small countries, but reliant on public transportation. So their first response was they pulled 3 of their bus models into a cave that was basically essentially like a Faraday cage, so underground, so that no radio signals can go in or out. And they were trying to figure out what the buses were communicating. And based on what they found, they decided their first response was to pull the SIM cards to prevent those buses from communicating to the rest of the world. And they said any updates that come in, they're going to inspect the updates before they get applied to the buses. So there's a couple of different ways to look at it. It's a cybersecurity risk. It's a potential denial of service risk. There's a hacker risk that hackers can come in. And, the big scare words here are around the thing that it's Chinese. But if you think about it, it's basically all the modern vehicles. If you look at a Tesla that comes in, a Tesla has, 5-6 cameras that are recording 24/7. Right. And and the Tesla headquarters can get access to that data at any time. So there's a big security risk here of who can get access to that data. And essentially, these things are rolling motorized spy vehicles, is one way to look at it.
Andy, will this go the other way, to Jack's point? So, United States, we sell cars overseas, and some countries may decide that we too are injecting things into there, and it can become an issue where everybody just says, I'm only buying cars made in my country.
Yeah, absolutely. And it probably should, to a large degree, especially with sensitive environments, not just military, but also infrastructure and other things that might be at risk. And again, it doesn't need to be nation states. It could be about nefarious actors taking control. We've seen, for example, various cars being able to be hacked and remote controlled, literally being able to crash you on the freeway. It doesn't have to be some sort of James Bond secret squirrel thing, planting a secret listening device and all this just to leak some sensitive data. Jack's spot on. All of these cars have got this ability. And it's not just over-the-air updates, it's GPS, it's back-based telemetry for things like, diagnostics, remote start and stop, a remote takeover. Look, Tesla's already bricked cars that have failed on their repayment plan. Do you think if our president comes out to Tesla and says, can you tell me where so-and-so is driving? Yeah, we've seen this also, by the way, with Uber many years ago, using telemetry for nefarious purposes, in that case, tracking journalists that were critical of them. This doesn't have to even be a nation state problem. And yeah, if the US government needs to hack into a Ford or a General Motors car that's made here to find out where someone is. And by the way, we've seen this with things like GPS devices on watches. Soldiers running off base in Afghanistan, I think it was, were giving up their location because they had Strava, the running tracking app, connected to their GPS watches. This is not an Israel story. This is not a China story. This is just a modern connectivity story. But I do think you're right, Mike. This is going to be give pause to a lot of nation states who are thinking, well, what if America takes over my buses or cars? This is absolutely not limited to these 2 or 3 nation states.
Mm-hmm. Wickey, every morning I get up, and it's cold here in New York, so I get out my little mobile app and I get the car turned on and I get, defrost going and the whole thing. So the car is kind of toasty warm when I get into it. Is that now going to have to include a security scan before I get in it? What do you think?
Theoretically, right, from professional perspective, I think from the data perspective, they do need to have some encryption for your driving data to protect where you go, right, and your identity or something. But if you see the the other interesting facts here, actually in Israel, that company, that Chinese car company, right, is the best seller for September actually, compared to other car company. So I think I respect their innovation and the quality they have there. But I should say, like, not only for car, right, other IoT device, it's very hard to standardize internationally. This is very, very true point, because there are so many different protocols or so many different models try to standardize it. So I do respect, like, a different country has like different thinking. Yeah, that's my.
Uh, Gina, should I sell the car and call an Uber? Would that be better?
Depends on where you live. That's another argument, a whole different thing. But I think what's missing too, like, I think everybody is talking about the holistic ways that could be problems, but even down to the smallest thing, if you have an ex that's trying to track you or wants to do something bad or trap you, if you've got people go on strike and just or want to be on strike, so they log in and disconnect everybody's system. It's incredible. I know they always have a car hacking village at DEF CON. How many systems are actually running, electronic systems, communication systems are running within just your normal Ford car, right? So there's almost like, I'm not sure how much of responsibility the car makers are taking for those systems, to let people know. I know I've never gotten anything from Ford that says, hey, you should, make sure you don't do this and this. That information is just kind of going off into the ether, I believe. So how do you, it seems like there should be a way to contain your personal data on the car that you paid your money for to your personal vehicle, and to be able to be notified if something has gone awry. But even as I'm saying that, like, who's gonna understand that? I definitely don't want to teach all my family about that. Like, what is the system? Says this is it's the nation state thing is a big deal, but the nation states have their own armies and whoever they have working on that, technically. So they've got very smart professional people, probably the smartest in their nations, working on protecting that sector. But, what happens if there's, worst case scenario, there's a way to hijack a whole city because you can turn the cars against each other, or you can shut them all down. And how can you
Mhm.
protect yourself against just the common normal things of your ex tracking everywhere you go because he hacked into your tire network? So,
Mhm.
I think
Jack, we talked about foreign governments here, but my local government may not always have my best interests at heart either, right? Because it could be that they want to track whether I'm gonna go vote on Tuesday, where's my car, and send me a message telling me the polling place is closed. So
Or who you're voting for, right? Depending on who they think you're voting for, they may say, let's disable all the cars of this group of people so that they can't get to the polling place. So that way we get more votes of our people, right? But yes, and I look at this as the greater story is that for many, many years we've waved a hand around. We've done a lot of hand waving around IT and industrial control. OT, IoT, and industrial control system security. And from an enterprise perspective, we basically said, okay, the short, quick, easy way to deal with that is we put them on an isolated network. There's and they're sort of separated, and it's essentially the version microsegmentation at a large scale for IoT devices. But the reality is that almost everything we have these days is an IoT device. If it's got a radio in it, it's not on a separate network that you can isolate and somehow control. If it's got a cellular network in it, you have no ability to understand what it's communicating to whom, and it's a bidirectional communication. So if you can send messages into the device, a bad person can send message in and take it over. If it can send data out, you can send data out that you don't want it to send out. So, and this is not a new problem. I remember, 25, 30 years ago when cell phone makers started adding cameras into cell phones, and you would go into a manufacturing facility or a chip fab, the first thing they would do is say all phones in the bucket here. You can't take a phone that has a camera with it into this facility because we don't want any pictures here, right? So I mean, but that was easy because we could confiscate the phone. Now what do you say? Strip naked. We take every single electronic device off. You have your rings and your watches and all the other stuff that we have that everything's got a radio in it, even Bluetooth, right? So how do we have a big problem that we've sort of, like I said, we've done a lot of hand waving around, and that's sort of, I don't know. I guess I'm putting the red flag out there and saying, wake up, pay attention to this a little bit.
All right. I think we'll reach that point where, to a certain degree, in every country we live in a surveillance. Let me try that again. All right. I think we reached the point where, to a certain degree, in almost every country we live in a surveillance state, whether we like it or not. It's now a question of what we're willing to tolerate or not tolerate. But as everybody just pointed out, maybe it's good to have a healthy dose of paranoia. Hey, I want to thank our guests for sharing their knowledge and insights today. I want to thank you all for watching today's show. It was great. And please stay tuned to the rest of the Techstrong.tv lineup. It's going to be equally awesome. And we'll see you all again tomorrow.